All right, folks, welcome to Investing for Beginners podcast. Today we have episode 367. Today, Andrew and I thought we would do something a little interesting. We thought we would riff on payments a little bit. So Andrew is going to air quote interview me as the one of the payment experts on the show, and maybe we'll uncover an insight or two that might be helpful for you as you try to invest. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he's going to grill me really, really hard.
Hopefully I don't leave any marks.
Hopefully.
So first off then, why should average investors, new investors, seasoned investors, why should they care about payments? Why should they consider it? What makes it special?
Everything. No, I'm joking. The big reason why I was attracted to payments is I think it's a fundamental way to look at financials that people can more easily understand. Investing in banks and insurance companies and investment banks and all that stuff can be a very profitable investments, but it also takes a lot of work. And there's a different lingo, there's a different jargon. You have to kind of understand the nature of the businesses. And it just can be, it's very complicated. There's lots of regulations. If you don't believe me, go pull up JP Morgan's 10K and rifle through their 270 page, epistle, which is about 3/4 of it is legal jargon. So if you ever have trouble sleeping, by the way, fantastic resource to help you fall asleep. You read a couple pages and you'll be gone in a heartbeat. So that's that. So, but the reason why I got into payments was because it's still part of the financial industry, but it's something that we can all understand fairly easily. And it is a vital part of our economy globally. The way we move money is vitally important to our existence and our continued growth as a people and as nations and society. And the easier that becomes, the better it is for everybody. And so payments really boils down to how do we spend our money and how can they make it easier for us to spend our money and make more money while doing it. And so that's really why I got interested in the whole payments thing.
So you mean to tell me you think that people are going to pay for things in the future?
I believe so. Yes. I don't know that we're, maybe someday we'll get to the Star Trek version where money is not an object and you just go to a holo projector and say Earl Grey hot and, it appears and you don't have to pay for it. Until we get to that point, yes, we're all going to have to pay for things. And so the way that most of us choose to do it is using plastic, using a card, debit card, credit card, and such. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we're still, at least for the near term future, we're still going to have to pay for stuff.
Yeah. About plastic in particular, that kind of stands out to you, or do you think maybe the average person doesn't really think about when it comes to plastic, the use of plastic, that kind of thing?
Companies like Visa and MasterCard, which is in their direct interest to track these things, keep track of not only how many payments are made, but how many new card holders there are, holding cards with their brands on them. And that has grown at a 10 to 15, 20% clip over the last a long time. And they're nowhere near saturation. And there's 7-8 billion people on the planet, and maybe a couple billion of them have Visa and MasterCard logos on their cards. So there's still a long ways to go. And so I think that when you think about the plastic, really it comes down to the ease of use. And 10, 15 years ago, checks were the thing. You go to a grocery store, you write a check. You pay for your rent with check. You paid your bills with a check. Before that, most everything was cash. So you carried around the green stuff. And when you needed to let's say you needed to make a larger payment, a lot of people would go to the bank and get a money order or a cashier's check and send that to their landlord or to pay their mortgage or something of that nature. And then we came across the credit card or the debit card. And once those started to gain traction, we started to see that it was a lot easier to make payments, made your wallet lighter, made it easier to keep track of your money. Because one of the, excuse me, drawbacks to a check is that when you write it and you send it to your landlord to pay for your rent, they may forget to cash it for a week and a half. And so you don't realize that the money is not been taken out of your account, and you go, party up and on a weekend, and the next thing you know, you're overdrawn because the check cleared. And so it made it a lot easier for most people to manage their cash flow, and it just makes it a lot easier. In today's day and age, now most of us, like if I say the words balance your checkbook, you get a blank stare from pretty much everybody, because it's something that's gone the way of the dodo. And I remember when I was working in the bank, I would have customers come in and have me help them balance the checkbook. And truthfully, before I started working for the bank, I never did it myself. And so I had this a skill I had to learn to help some of the customers. But since then, I haven't done it since. And that was 7 or 8 years ago. So I haven't had the need to do it, and we don't need to do it. Doesn't mean you don't need to budget. That's a different conversation. But plastic makes it easier for us to pay for things, to know what we have in our checking accounts, and you can set up safeguards so that you don't spend more than you have. And it just makes it a lot easier for us to control our spending habits and our money. And so I think that's why it becomes more and more a way for people to embrace moving money around.
I wish I sent this to you when I saw it on Instagram. It was like a video of, these 3 younger guys hanging out, and then he's like, "Hey, you owe me $15 or something." So one guy, have you seen that one?
No, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
It brings out the walker for the guy who wants to give him cash.
Right.
But it's so true. Like, I know for myself and like my younger brother's generation, it's all Venmo. It's all, so like, why cash, right? Like it's such a hassle to pay cash at a store. So much easier. And like you said, all the tracking reasons and fraud and all this to pay with card.
Right. Exactly. I remember, and not too distant future or past, you'd have $20 in your wallet and it would be gone. You would have no idea where it went. You don't remember what you spent it on. It's just little things along the way, and it just disappears. And the beautiful thing about using plastic or using a card, a Venmo, your debit card, whatever, is you can see all that. You can see where your money went. And so if you are one of those people that likes to track your money, which you should, then this is an easy way to say, I have no idea I spent that much money at a convenience store, or I spent that much money at an arcade. Really dropping $50 a day or $50 a week at just all that makes it a lot easier for consumers to manage their money. And I think that's why it just continues to gain in popularity.
You mentioned the international piece. Too frequently I'm too US focused. So, what's the international landscape for payments? And is there anything about it that gets you excited there as well?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So the United States has been ahead of the curve in some respects because we've had better technology than other parts of the country, or we've been air quote more developed. And so we've had access to more technology earlier on. But as countries like India, East Asia, Africa, South America become more and more, not advanced, that's the wrong word for it, but as they come into the internet age, so to speak, they all are getting access to these computers in their hands. I'm holding up my iPhone. We think of them as a phone, but it's a computer. And for many of the people that get an iPhone for the first time, or an Android, that's their first computer ever in life. And it allows them to do all the things that we take for granted. Now they can do via payments. And because our society has evolved to using a debit card or having a card on our phone that we can use to make online payments or payments in person, a lot of these people have never had bank accounts before, or if they did, it was very limited in its scope. And so now with this computer in their hand, they can do all these crazy, wild, awesome things that we sometimes, well, I think we're actually behind the curve now on some of the opportunities and the technologies. And I'll give you a couple examples here. So one of my friends, Thomas Chua, he just recently went to China for a couple weeks. And one of the things he talked about when he got there was the company that he was using. It was Alipay, which is part of Alibaba. I guess, a super app that allows you to scan a QR code, and then it basically links you to all the services within Alipay. So you can make payments, you can make restaurant reservations, you can buy movie tickets, you can buy plane tickets, you can do everything all from one place. You can even call up the rideshare service, which I think is Didi or something like that. You can pull all that up from the one app. You can also make all your payments for those things from one place. And we don't really have anything like that here. Ours is amalgamation of all these things. But my point is that because that's brand new and it's really been rolled out to the whole country in China, and a lot of people didn't have access to all these amalgamations of things like we do here in the United States, they embraced it wholeheartedly. And it makes, as Thomas said, it makes your life 1,000 times easier when you're traveling, especially if you're traveling in a foreign country, because it's all right there. It makes it super easy for you to do things. And the other anecdote I'll give you is my fiance and I went to Brazil a couple years ago, and they're experiencing kind of the same evolution or revolution in cell phones and online payments. And they're, again, ahead of the curve, especially among adoption. And so I will never forget this. We were in this tiny little surf shop by the beach. And I went in there to buy a soda because I was thirsty. And as I was kind of, walking around and just looking, two guys came in, walked by me, grabbed 2 candy bars from the little candy aisle, walked around the aisle, held up their phones, and walked out of the store holding their phones. So they didn't even stop to, air quote, pay at the cashier, but I could see on their phone that the app that they used to make their payments connected with the cashier's app, and it just,
Wow.
it made the air payments as they walked by. They didn't even have to go and hold the thing over the unit. They just walked by, waved at it basically, and it accepted their payments. And I remember standing there going, whoa, that is awesome. 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 And when we were on the beach, there were all these vendors going up and down the beach selling everything from, clothes to sunglasses to coconuts. And they all had little payment pads that were basically iPhones or similar to that. And they none of them accept the cash. So the only way you could buy a coconut on the beach was to go up there with your phone. You couldn't even do it with a card. You had to go up there with your phone and show them, and that's how you make a payment. And because all those things are tied up in their economy and that's a natural way that they do things, especially the younger generation, then that's just going to become more and more part of their seamless making payments evolution. And as those things sweep across foreign markets or the places outside of the United States, the more and more possibilities they are to do all these things. And so to me, there's that part of it that is exciting. The other part that I find exciting is the cross-border transfers. So a company like Wise, Visa started their own concept called Visa Direct. And basically what it does is allows you to move money across borders. So in other words, from the United States to, Taiwan. And it allows you to do that for less fees and not having to go to the bank and having to do something god awful like a wire transfer. If you've never done something like that, it's one of the worst experiences you'll ever have in a bank, banker and for the person sending the money. It's a nightmare. And it's also very expensive, naturally. So something like cross-border payments, which there's trillions of dollars moving back and forth across borders from people that think of people that come here from Latin America. and they work really hard to do 2 or 3 jobs, and they want to send money back to their family in Colombia. The best way to do that is through some of these cross-border payment systems that they have now, like Wise, Remitly, Visa Direct, PayPal has one. There's just a lot of them. But anyway, I think that is going to become a bigger and bigger thing, especially as we continue to have different currencies and have that need to move money. And the reason why I'm so excited about this is there's no way that a company like Visa would embrace this idea and spend a lot of money on it unless they thought it was going to be a big thing. And they're a leader in this space as far as like payments go. And the fact that they're promoting it, pushing it, and branching away from their core business to get something started like this, that to me says, okay, there's an opportunity here.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's a whole nother avenue potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
That goes beyond even what we've discussed up to now, just to compound on top of all the other trends going on.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool.
What about for the whole crypto thing? I mean, that used to be, I remember when I first started looking at Visa, that was a pretty loud thing. Like even in earnings calls, there's a lot of talk. Some of that has died down, but I feel like it's something that if you're going to have a position in a company like this, you should have at least a basic understanding of like what's the real threat and like how are incumbents dealing with that. So shed some light on that if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think if you talk to most rational people about Bitcoin and get away from the Dogecoin bros, talk to rational people, most people will admit that the blockchain technologies have a lot to offer society. The problem is there's kind of a layered effect of different issues, if you will. Number one, there's a lot of fraud. And right now it seems like there's more fraud than there is good. And so human nature being what it is, if there's an opportunity to do bad, some people are going to do bad. And it enables them to do bad things in part because there's little to no way to regulate it. There's no way to really track who the bad people are. The systems that we have in place now, the way that we all use money, whether it's here in the United States or abroad, have some standardized regulations. So there's a means to an end to help protect yourself in some way, shape, or form. And with crypto, the nature of it is to be anonymous, and that lends itself to not being able to be regulated. And unfortunately, it needs to be. And until that barrier is really crossed, I think it's going to be really, really hard for crypto to really achieve, I think, the potential that it could have for society. And I guess the next part of it is that the adoption curve of it, like right now, to use it to make a payment, if you want to go buy pizza with some sort of crypto you own, it ain't easy. And it's really, really clumsy. It's very cumbersome. There's not a lot of acceptance for it. And because of the volatility of the value of it, it's really hard to justify possibly losing, $300 to go buy a pizza, right? If you do that with stable, normal current, air quote, normal currencies like a dollar or a euro, you spend $1, you know what you're going to get for $1. With the volatility of the price or of a crypto, it's really hard to know if you spend it, is the person receiving it getting a value? Are you losing money? And so that just makes it really hard for it to be used. So it's really hard to use, very, very hard to use. So that puts a lot of barriers in place. Then the value of it makes it very hard. And then the third part is, until I can see my 87-year-old mother using crypto as easily as she uses her debit card, I just, color me skeptical that the adoption thing is ever going to get to where it could be. Could it? Of course it could. Could I be 100% wrong? Absolutely. But I think in my lifetime, I don't anticipate seeing something like that take full effect. As an investor, you have to acknowledge that crypto blockchain technologies has some utility, and at some point somebody's going to air quote crack the code and make part of them useful for society. The thing I like is a lot of the companies that I like and invest in are embracing technology and embracing working with crypto to try to air quote be ahead of the curve. And so a company like Visa and MasterCard, for example, they have embraced working with crypto, blockchain kinds of people, whether different businesses or developers, to try to make it as easy as they can for their customers. And I think that's a smart way to go about it, because they're not putting their head in the sand and just ignoring something that could be a potential threat for them. And they're just kind of having open arms and saying, okay, if this is going to be a thing, we're going to be involved with it. We're going to be a part of it. And I think that is the smart way to go about doing it. Too many times I think we see in industry, a company sees that, you look at Blockbuster and Netflix, right? There's no way that the people running Blockbuster didn't know in some level that Netflix was coming for them, and they just chose to ignore until it was too late. My ex-wife used to work for PetSmart, and when she was working for them, they had zero presence in online sales. They didn't even have a website. And this is when companies like Chewy and Petco and all these other companies are like hugely embracing the internet. And there's PetSmart, one of the biggest pet retailers, with no presence. Like, duh. And so, it's just stuff like that you see sometimes in industry. So long story short, when I see a company like Visa or MasterCard or PayPal or Nubank or any of these people that are embracing using crypto or trying to make it easier for their customers, I think that's a good thing to do.
100%. I appreciate you breaking that down, and it is important to consider what's the other side of the coin for any industry company investment. All right. This all might be very exciting. So let's get down to it. Rubbing my hands together. How do we make money from this?
How do you make money from this? I think, the way that I have chosen to make money from this is try to find, I guess, who I think are going to be the best of breed in the different sectors and how they can benefit from being the best. So when I think about a company like Visa or MasterCard, you could, interchange them, but I chose Visa mostly because they have a much, much bigger presence here in the United States and than they do abroad. And until things change, the United States is still kind of the leader in the global economy. And so I think as the global economy grows here in the United States, Visa is going to benefit from that. And they're going to reap all the benefits from that. So I think having a play in the company that helps secure almost all of our payments. There's a recent DOJ, we spoke about this on the last episode. There's a DOJ suit against Visa for basically being a monopoly in the debit card space. And the fact of the matter is they do process 60, 65, 70% of all debit cards here in the United States. And other than being forced not to, I don't know how much that's going to change. And again, a big reason why so many people choose to use Visa is because they have the best network. They have the best security. When merchants use a Visa card, they know they're going to get their payment. And that carries a lot of water when you're thinking about investments and why a company would be a good company. So when I think about the payment space, there's different layers of things that you can look at. And so Visa is really a toll for all payments. They're not a debit card or a credit card per se. It's a scheme. So when you see the Visa or MasterCard logo on a card and you make a payment with that, your basic payment is being routed on the rails of Visa or MasterCard through your bank and through the merchant bank. And so all these different entities get different slices of the pie, and that's how the economics work. So Visa and MasterCard make a very small amount compared to the banks. And so, but you have different ways you can invest in that food chain, if you will. And so one is to invest in companies like Visa or MasterCard, which kind of control the whole toll road. But then you can also invest in the companies that process your payment in the store. So a company that I own, Adyen, which is based out of the Netherlands, that's what they do, is they help merchants process payments. And so if you go online and you pay for your Netflix subscription, which they're a customer of, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on the website, you can do it, anywhere. And that's what Adyen enables them to do. And so that's a piece of the pie that Adyen gets from the fee that's charged for processing a payment. The other side of the coin is you can look at banks. JP Morgan Chase, largest credit card, debit card issuer in the United States. They make a nice chunk of change from being a merchant bank. So they allow people to use their cards and make payments on their cards, and they get a fee for that. And so that's a great place to make money. And then you have like all kinds of different, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? The picks and shovels of the industry. So there's another company I own, which is called Fiserv. And one of their big core parts of the business is handling the plumbing for banks. So super exciting, very sexy. But when we go online and do our online banking with Bank of America, Fiserv is the one enabling that. When we look at our bank statement online, Fiserv is the one enabling that. It's necessary stuff and we can't do without it, but it's not very sexy. And it's also very consolidated, slow growing, but it's a strong business. And Fiserv has other components of their business as well. But those are the kinds of things that I try to look for, is either the main player in a particular industry or a pick and shovel that is ancillary to the main player, but can really benefit from that. And that's really how I look at it, as a way to make money. And there's the explosion in fintech and everything over the last 4 or 5 years has been huge. There's lots and lots of opportunities to play in places that we haven't even explored yet.
Yeah. And those are all awesome ideas. And I know you put a lot of thought into it, and it shines in the work you do, how you look at the opportunity, but also the competitive positioning and, does this company have a moat or not? And I think that goes a long way towards the long-term potential of these kind of ideas. Are there any that are on your watch list and you're like, man, I wish this thing would just get a little less expensive?
Right.
Could also be exciting.
Yes, there's a few. So I'll go back to Brazil for a second. There's 2 companies down there that I've been reading about and following for several years. One is called PagSeguro, and the other one is Stone Company. They are both payment processors that are based out of Brazil. Stone Co. might be familiar to some people because Warren Buffett, or arguably some of his lieutenants, bought the IPO of the company kind of pre-pandemic, and it saw a huge run up, and then it saw a huge drop off. And now it's trading for a PE of 10, 8, 10, something like that. So something crazy. So that one and PagSeguro, which is very similar, it didn't have the same notoriety as StoneCo did, but they're a big player. And when I was in Brazil, I saw them everywhere. So they were very big in southern Brazil, and they had their terminals everywhere I went. And so I really like those 2 companies. Another company that I'm big on, I haven't taken a bite on yet, is Wise, which is a company out of England. And they are probably one of the premier cross-border transfer companies. And it's an amazing service. Andrew and I use it personally, and we use it to pay some of the people that help us. And it's amazing. It's so easy. I mean, as a former banker, thinking back on the nightmare that wire transfers were, the fact that you can go online and do this in literally less than 2 minutes is a little mind numbing. I love the financials. I love the company. I love the people that work for the company. It looks really interesting. And so I just need to do a little more work and think a little more deeply about potential moat, and some of the things that could, I guess, unseat that. Those are 3 that really spring to the top of mind that I'm very interested in. There's another company called Checkout.com that's not public yet, that is based out of the Middle East. and they are very similar to Adyen or Stripe. And I've seen some of their numbers when they've revealed them from time to time, and they're pretty darn good. And from what I've understood, their user experience is right up there with Stripe and Adyen. And so I think that could be a strong contender if and when it ever goes public.
Nice. Any parting words for all of this? This is all just a huge brain dump of information. It's been awesome. So anything else you'd like to say about payments?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would like to say is there's a lot of opportunity in the fintech / payment landscape. And I think you need to figure out what kind of investor you are. And then you can go and look for the kinds of opportunities that could present themselves. If you're, a more of a risk on kind of investor, there's lots of opportunities with young, hot, up and coming companies. A couple in Canada, there's one in Uruguay, outside of Brazil, that really offer some interesting potential. But if you're more on the more conservative side, then there's lots of opportunities in that as well. And you can get good returns on either end of the spectrum. And I just think it really kind of comes down to, what is your risk profile and what are you looking for? But I think it's a really good place to fish because there's lots of new entries, there's lots of new companies, and there's lots of great opportunity growth-wise if that's something that really kind of scratches your itch.
Yeah, totally. I have a few payments companies myself, being the old boring investor that I am. I've done well, and I do see a long time horizon there. And I don't want to call it fun because investing is not supposed to be fun, but it feels secure, like a secure investment, if that makes sense.
Yes.
At least the stocks I picked, because I understand those businesses, but
right.
I'm definitely not, uncovering the most craziest companies. These are pretty well-known businesses. So I wonder if that has something to do with it too.
I'm sure it could be, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look at the portfolios of some of the strongest long-term investors. They've all, it's rare that they have lots of unknown names, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Okay. So final thoughts to your final thoughts. If people are interested in learning more about payments, going down that rabbit hole, what's your recommendation for them?
There's probably a couple suggestions. Number one is there's lots of great people out there that are teaching about payments, and I'll give you 3 names. Number one is a guy named Alex Johnson. He has a podcast. He also has a blog. I'll put the link to the show notes in. He worked for FICO or Fair Isaac Company years ago, and he's been in the payment space for a long time. Super smart guy, great writer. The other one would be Mark Rubenstein, who I believe is based out of England. He has also been in payments for a very long time, and he writes a fantastic blog called Net Interest, and that's a great resource to learn more about payments. And then the other guy is named Jason Mikula, who's an American, but he lives in the Netherlands. And he is also very, very deeply involved in the whole payment space. All 3 of those guys are my go-tos. I read them every week, and I've been reading them for many, many years. So huge kudos to them. The last would be stuff we've done. So if you go to our website, einvestingforbeginners.com, went down a bit of a payments rabbit hole, if you will, and wrote a lot about Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, American Express, how they work, the business models, all those kinds of things. So hopefully some of that stuff can be very helpful as well.
Oh, it totally is. And I completely stole it when I was researching for Visa, and it saved me so much time in understanding all of it. And yeah, I mean, you could probably teach a college course on that based on all the material that's on our website.
Right.
If you just go in the search bar, you type in Visa,
Yep.
you'll get a ton of your articles pop up, and that's a great place to fish.
Yeah. Hopefully people find it helpful. All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up Andrew's interview. Hopefully I don't feel like he grilled me that hard, but you can let me know.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our little breakdown or riff on payments. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out at newsletter@einvestingforbeginners.com. I read it every day. And so if you have any questions about what we discussed, I'm happy to discuss. You can also reach out to us on the Twitter machine. Andrew and I are both there. And so with that, we'll go ahead and sign us off. You guys go out there and invest with the margin of safety. Emphasis on the safety. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you all next week.